What I'm going to say is not an academic research. So it's from my personal experience and from some research that I did on trauma. And so, yeah, I'm going to speak about how the communism system affected the churches that we have today. And I'm going to focus on the mindset and mentality of the churches, their leadership, and also the community of the churches. I did my comparison also based on my experience that I had working with different Armenian churches and also churches that are in Europe and in the States. And also, I come from a very atheistic and communistic family, so I was, my childhood went learning a lot of communistic ideology, so my grandfather was very enthusiastic about it. So having all these experiences, so I can kind of share my personal experience and explain why things are the way they are. As I told, I did some research on trauma. So because Armenians have gone all the nations in this region have gone through many wars, and we had the genocide, and then the communism came. So there were some strange behaviors among the Armenians. So that's why I kind of did some research to understand what's happening. Armenians found some refuge in the communistic system because it gave us 70 years of peace and freedom. So we could kind of rest and relax a little bit. But as after any kind of trauma, when the trauma is gone, you are having post-traumatic expressions in your body and in your mind. And the recent studies also showed that a person who has undergone through some kind of trauma, it can go to the genes and go to a generation to another generation. So basically, there was an article I was reading. It was telling in order to get rid of the whole communistic mindset and trauma, we need 100 years of time so that the generation would change and the mindset would change. So the first thing that I observed, and I guess you all have observed, is that people of the post-communistic people tend to be very obedient to the authorities. So it's a kind of blind obedience to the leadership. When they hear something, when they are taught something, they are not courageous enough to discuss or object to the decision or to the idea of the leader. Also, this is not 100% true for all the churches and communities, but this is the general observation that I have. So people view leaders as those who have absolute power, and in this case, given from the above, in the case of churches, people view their pastors as people who have absolute power given from heaven. Of course, we know that God calls people to be pastors, and this leadership is to be respected and considered really to be from God. But this is kind of blind obedience to this and blind acceptance to this person, as people during the Soviet Union time would accept Lenin and Marx and those figures. So they accept their pastors and leaders as those. So they admire them, and they try to please their leaders, and they view them as totally sinless, totally always right and correct, holy people, almost equal to Jesus. I have even observed some communities where the church structure and the pastor had more authority than the Bible and Jesus themselves over people. So communist mindset hugely affected on the right of free will and the right of free speech. Obviously, the speakers already before me brought those examples. And this was also transferred to the church setting. So post-communistic people are cautious in what they are saying and in what they are doing. So the next thing is the controlling leadership. So controlling leadership is not open to criticism or objections. So we have this example that I have this example that when the church decided to raise their voice, so the leadership or the pastors were not really happy with that. So that and that causes a lot of tension in the churches. So people are not free to express themselves. People do not feel they have the right to object also, or to discuss or question the decision. So also, the leaders do not know how to take the criticism. When their work or decision is being criticized, they take it personally. Like they think that their personalities are being criticized and they are not good enough, they are not wise enough, and so on. And of course, to keep the authority and power, some of the church leaders tend to use manipulation and gaslighting. So making sure those who follow them feel always guilty. Of course, they use the Bible and non-relevant biblical passages and examples to prove they are always right. So this may be too strong, but this is just my observation, and again, this is not true for all the churches, but for certain communities. So communism says that our system is the best, and so they do propaganda against other systems and other structures. So this is the same for the post-Soviet churches. They tend to prove themselves to be the best. They feel the need to prove themselves they are right, they are good, they are the best church, they are the best community, and they criticize other churches. So they want to make sure that people do not go from their churches, people do not leave their systems. This is another way to control the free will of people as well. So another thing that I observed is that people, post-communistic people, trust the leaders to make decisions for themselves. As the leader is always right and knows the best, they rely on the leader's decisions to even for their personal lives, avoiding to take responsibility for their own actions. For example, a lady may not be sure whether to marry this guy or no. They may go to the pastor, and the pastor will decide for her. And so this way they avoid taking personal responsibility and personal decisions. If something goes wrong, they are not to blame. It's not their fault. It was the will of the Lord or pastor's fault. So this is another observation I had. Therefore, people lack initiatives and they lack the ability to be more proactive in their lives. So communism puts boundaries over the person, what they can do, what they can't do. So this is kind of becoming true in the churches as well. So people are not very proactive, people do not take initiatives. Like if they see that something is wrong, they don't correct it until they get the order from the leader to do it, until their pastor will tell them there is an issue, we have to do it. Like they will not take actions by their own will to make some changes or to bring some changes. So this is also another type of trauma that causes timidity and fear among the people. And if a person has this fear, they can't be creative, they can't be proactive, they can't be who they are in themselves. And so another thing, the last thing that I observed, and we talked about it. So communism takes the individualism of the people. So you are not an individual, but you are part of a system. You have to blend in, you have to behave in a way to be accepted. So this has a little bit of positive side as well. The positive side is that post-communistic churches are more communal. They tend to protect and support each other more, and they take care of the other believers more than the churches in the West, because the churches in the West have become more individualistic. Everyone just lives for themselves and that's all. But in the Eastern Europe, where there was communism, people tend to be more attentive towards each other's needs. But of course, as I told, it takes away the individual mindset, and people do not feel that they are just individuals, but they are part of the big system. So these are my observations are quite subjective. So I hope to hear more from you. So do you have any observation? Do you have any other opinion or objection to what I told? Yeah, I would love to hear from you as well. So you're free to ask me a question or just make observations now. Thank you.
Թոթ կիտղեբի դուգակտ դուդա ազուստեբտ դրամեսակիտ իսկ
English, sorry. Hello. I actually have an experience from last night on the bus, and it's one of the reasons why I'm so interested in Soviet mentality and its influence on church and religion today. I was speaking to my Georgian friend in English about this conference, and as soon as I said the word Orthodox, someone looked at me like, how dare I say that? And I was very confused. I said nothing wrong. I was saying good things. But it was almost like I was not allowed to say it. Like I was not allowed to say it, maybe because I don't know, am I a foreigner? I'm not allowed to talk about like Orthodox Church. I have no idea what happened, but I just got this look like, how dare you say that? That it's so wrong to say. I don't know, may I not speak about it in public? I don't know if anyone has had this experience, but I was very shocked because I wasn't saying anything bad at all. So I don't know if you've had this experience or anyone else can explain to me. Thank you.
I'm sorry about the experience you had first. I don't know what to say honestly, because if you said like believer or Protestant, that would be the reaction in an Orthodox culture. How dare you say you're a Protestant or you're talking about believers, because everyone in this context are Christians. So I'm not sure what to say about your experience, but even among the Protestants, if someone, in some Protestant groups, like being an Orthodox is kind of not viewed as a good thing, unfortunately. Because I guess because of the experience we had in Soviet Union when also the church was used against people, and also because the Orthodox churches tend to persecute the Protestants, so that's why there are always tensions between Orthodox churches and Protestants in this region. But I don't know what happened in your situation. Yeah, sorry.
I have a question about church leadership and the splitting of churches. So, in my observation, I've lived in different countries in the Caucasus. It happens more often that churches split, or that people go out of a church and make a new church, open a new church in the Protestant spectre, than in the West. And attempts to reconcile either don't exist or they just don't work. So my question is, my observation is that I think mostly it's because of authoritarian leadership. It's mostly not because of doctrinal questions. And my question is, do you think this comes from the Soviet times, or does it come from the culture in the Caucasus, that people are less ready to go to compromises, or is it only the Soviet influence, or is it a mixture of both maybe?
I think it could be mixture. I have observed the same. Like I think in Armenia at least people go into extremes. You are either black or white. You are either on our side or you are not on our side. So you can't be somewhere in the middle. You can't be in a setting. I think it comes also from the Soviet Union times when someone who has a different mind is considered to be an enemy to the system. And this came to the church as well. If you think differently, you may be a threat or a danger to our small community. But also, I think Caucasian people are quite extremist in many things, and we are mountain people, so you are either high or low. So I think both may play their role. Yeah.
Yeah, Knarik, I had also these observations because my research is based on this topic, right? What are the Soviet imprints on evangelical churches in Georgia? And This is what I bumped. The problem I bumped into was the following. I did observe the same things that you listed, but to what extent it is purely Soviet, or how much cultural dimension is in there? Because, for example, you talked about individualism and taking it out, and that we are communal. But yeah, we are also communal cultures, right? We are not individualistic cultures. Or authoritarian leadership. Yes, we are placed as evangelicals in the Orthodox countries where a hierarchy means a lot. Yeah, so it also can be cultural. So I bumped into this wall of not knowing to what extent it is cultural and to what extent it is Soviet. So, and yeah, what is your? It's just a comment, and yeah, I don't know how you see that. And Katrin already tackled that. Yeah.
It's really hard to answer. It's, but what came to my mind first is that I was reading a book about the Armenians that were in 1800s, and it seems like women had more powerful. It seems like people were more individualistic. Like when I read about them on the stories, and also the literature that was written during that time, I can feel like there was so much individualism. Like we even have an Armenian writer who was a little, like, not a little, I don't know, he was a homosexual, and he had more freedom to write about those things. And then we have a homosexual writer from the Soviet Union time who was afraid to, and we just discovered in the archives that, oh, he was homosexual. So I would say the Soviet imprint plays a huge role, but of course it's also cultural. And I think it's also cultural because if we didn't have this mindset, it would be hard for the Soviet Union to occupy us. So we have this tendency to a little bit obey the leadership and go after them and maybe rely on them and rely on other people to make decisions for us, not question the authorities. I don't know. But also our cultures were formed on Christian basis, and maybe it also played a huge role. Our early churches kind of formed our ideologies already. So I don't know.